Julius Caesar conquered half the known world. He commanded armies, he wrote history, he became the most powerful man on earth, and he was absolutely terrified of going bald. Hair loss is not a modern problem. Men have been losing their hair and desperately trying to stop it for thousands of years. Today we're going back to ancient Rome to find out why Romans went bald, what they did about it, and what their solutions tell us about how far hair loss science has actually come. Let's start with Caesar himself. Historical records describe Julius Caesar as deeply self-conscious about his thinning hair. He famously combed it forward to cover his receding hairline. Sound familiar? He was also granted the right to wear a laurel wreath at all times by the Roman Senate. Most historians believe he used this privilege primarily to hide his baldness. The most powerful man in Rome, hiding his hairline with a wreath. Some things never change. So why did Romans go bald? Same reason you do. DHT, genetics, androgenetic alopecia. The biology of male pattern baldness has not changed in thousands of years. The same hormone that shrinks your follicles today was doing the same thing to Roman senators 2,000 years ago. What's interesting is that Romans had no idea why it happened. They blamed everything: diet, the gods, bad air, too much thinking. One Roman physician named Pliny the Elder documented dozens of supposed hair loss cures: bear fat rubbed into the scalp, hippopotamus fat, burnt mouse heads mixed with bear grease. None of it worked, obviously. But here's what's fascinating. Romans did identify something real even without understanding the science. They noticed that eunuchs, men who had been castrated, never went bald. They didn't know why, but the observation was correct. We now know why. Castration eliminates testosterone production. No testosterone means no DHT. No DHT means no follicle damage. Romans stumbled onto the DHT connection 2,000 years before scientists named it. Romans tried everything to stop hair loss. Pliny the Elder recommended rubbing the scalp with a mixture of bear fat and hippopotamus fat. He also suggested burnt mouse heads, boiled snakes, the fat of a murdered man. We are not making this up. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, tried opium, horseradish, beetroot, and pigeon droppings on his own thinning hair. Also didn't work. But here's where it gets interesting. Hippocrates also noticed something that modern medicine has confirmed. He observed that men who were castrated before puberty never developed male pattern baldness. This is the same observation Romans made, and it's completely accurate. Hippocrates couldn't explain the mechanism, but he correctly identified that something connected to male hormones caused baldness. It took until 1942 for scientist James Hamilton to formally prove that androgens, male hormones, were the cause of male pattern baldness. Hippocrates figured it out 2,000 years earlier. He just didn't have the vocabulary. Not every Roman was ashamed of baldness. The Emperor Augustus, Rome's first emperor, was reportedly bald and didn't hide it. He was considered one of the most powerful and attractive men of his era. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wrote about baldness directly. He argued that a man who is upset about losing his hair is upset about the wrong things. Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are. In other words, own it. Roman attitudes toward baldness were actually more complicated than you might think. On one hand, Julius Caesar's obsession shows that hair loss anxiety was real and common. On the other, Roman culture valued strength, power, and stoicism above physical appearance. A bald general who won battles was infinitely more respected than a full-haired man who lost them. Sound familiar? The data we covered in a previous video showed that bald men are still perceived as more dominant and powerful today. Romans knew this 2,000 years ago. So what does Roman history actually tell us about hair loss? A few things. First, hair loss anxiety is universal and ancient. You are not alone. Julius Caesar was not alone. Every generation of men has dealt with this. Second, bad treatments have always existed, from burnt mouse heads to miracle shampoos. People have always tried to profit from hair loss anxiety. Be skeptical. Third, the science took thousands of years, but it got there. Minoxidil, finasteride, hair transplants. These actually work. Romans would have given anything for them. Fourth, some Romans chose to own it and were celebrated for it. That option has always been available. Hair loss is as old as humanity. The shame around it is old too, but so is the strength of the men who decided it didn't define them. That's Balding Out Loud. Science, history, honesty, stick figures. Subscribe for a new video every week. Drop your questions below. We read every single one. See you next week.